Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Jillian Bender-Cormier. I'm brand manager with Bender Insurance Solutions. We want to welcome you to another educational Bender U webinar, Your Injury and Illness Prevention Program in Your Company's Safety Culture. Some housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the chat box or in the Q&A section. We'd like this to be an interactive experience, so our presenter will be available to answer your questions in real time throughout the webinar. During our additional Q&A time at the end of the presentation, I'll be sharing other questions you might have with our speaker. We want to be conscious of time, so if we don't get to answer all of your questions, we'll gladly reach out to you individually after the webinar. You're all in listen-only mode and will remain muted throughout today's session. This class is being recorded, and at the conclusion of the webinar, both the recording link and a copy of today's slide deck will be forwarded to you. We have an incredible expert sharing with us this morning, and I have the honor of introducing him. Chad Watts is a VP of Construction Risk with Bender Insurance Solutions. He's been specializing in insurance for contractors for over 17 years. Chad's from Roseville. He loves to coach baseball, and he loves to serve others. He enjoys watching others succeed and find happiness. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you, Jillian. And it's true. That is what I love, watching others succeed and find happiness. But the question always is, how do you define success and happiness, right? So here's a little bit of how I define happiness. Look at those smiles. This is my family. This makes me happy, seeing my family do what they love with a smile on their face. For you, all of you listening, for just a moment, I want you to think about your family or your business. It's nice when people listen to you. You teach them something, you teach them how to do it, you show them how, you explain the dangers and why it would be good for them. But what makes you happier? When you have to force them to do it or when they choose to do it? And I find the most joy when my children choose to do things that are right. I not only do the things I do for them for their happiness, but I talk to them the way I do. I treat them the way I do. I am the example that I am so that they have a good example, a good way of finding success and happiness. So think about that in your work and in your homes. What example are you setting for them? All right, let's move on here. Here's our disclosure. There are rules and regulations that govern us, and so what I'm going to share is not going to supersede any of those rules or regulations. Just so if there's anything you need clarification on, let's discuss it. All right, so here's what we're going to discuss today: your injury and illness prevention program, safety committees, communication and accountability, consequences, good and bad, right? Rewards and not just discipline are important when it comes to a consequence program. And I want you all to keep this in mind as we continue through, because they're all related and they feed into one another. You're going to see that accountability is a regular term throughout this. So let's start with a quick exercise on why. All right. Think about your why. Why be safe? Everybody needs a why. What would inspire you to change your behaviors and be safe? What would inspire your employees to change their behavior and be safe? Think about how you train your employees, right? The topic and discusses how we inform them. So those topics we're training on, the things we're discussing, we're informing them about the topic. But how do you change their behavior? How do you transform your employees to be safer? Helping them connect to the topic with a personal why moves you from informing them to transforming them. Having a why will change their behaviors. So think about that. Think about how to help them find a why. All right, so that leads us to our injury illness prevention program. What is an IIPP and how do you use it? We're going to start with a poll. So here's the poll question. Here are the options. I'm going to pull up that poll here. We've got a fun way. You can pull up your camera. So get your camera on your phone, hover on that QR code, and click the link. It will take you to this poll question where you can submit your answer. But I want to know, when is the last time you referred to your IIPP? Was it last quarter? Was it last month? Last year? Or you haven't looked at it since you bought it? Let's see what we're getting. Great, somebody looked at it last quarter, last year, last month. Fantastic. Come on, we got to get some honesty. Some of you haven't looked at it since you bought it. Maybe not. Maybe everybody's on here because they are looking at it regularly. All right, we've had 6 people answer. Maybe some of you are struggling with that poll, getting it pulled up. But I love that nobody's answered back when I bought it. That's great. Some of you are looking at this. The IIPP is so important to your organization and the safety culture. We've still got some answers coming in. All right, I'm going to give you 2 more seconds. 2, 1. Thank you all for participating. We're going to do one more of those in a little bit, so keep those cameras available. All right. So what is your IIPP? It's the written document that explains how your organization prevents injury and illness, just like the name says. Remember the slide earlier that I was going to talk about accountability more? Well, this injury illness prevention program is the written document that becomes the accountability tool for safety. You use it to communicate how you prevent injury and illness. You use it to see what elements are failing if there is an accident, injury, illness, or even a near miss. All right, this is the accountability tool. We got one right here, this big book, right? There's about 12 pages of this 200 pages. That's the IIPP. I've seen some as few as 4 pages. But that document, the IIPP section, is the accountability tool when things start looking unsafe, accidents start occurring. We're going to look at that program to identify where we're falling short on our jobs or in our shops or wherever that might be. All right, so here is another QR code that will take you to this link. You don't have to do this right now. There's no real participation on this, but this link will help you know what belongs in your IIPP. I'm going to click that link. I'll show you what that will pull up. It will look like this. Okay, these are the requirements. This is the code that tells you what is required in an IIPP. It's not very fun to look at, but there are 8 elements. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, 4. They're kind of hidden in here. There's 5, 6, 7, and 8. Told you they were hidden. So there's the 8 elements that are required in this program. I simplified them a little bit on this next slide. But take a look at these 8 elements that you would see in your program. Think about the last incident you had at your organization and which of these elements, or one of them or many of them, failed that led to that incident. Yeah, I work with a lot of employers in reviewing incidents, and this is what I hear a lot. All right, so here's an example. John cut his leg using a box cutter incorrectly. We just had training last month on proper cutting procedures, and John was in the training. Employees just don't listen. All right, that's kind of the dialogue around some of these incidents. So I'll ask you, what did this employer decide the root cause was based on that little dialogue? Right? They chalked it up to employees don't listen. There's another approach to an incident like that. What if you sat with your team and discussed the training that John sat through? Right? Was it a very effective training? Why did the training change John's behavior? Right? Did the manager or foreman even reinforce the training in some way after the training? Was there something about the task? Maybe John knew how to do it right, but there was something about the task that prevented him from cutting correctly, right? Maybe there was a hazard that didn't get corrected, or he didn't know how to communicate the hazard, right? There was something else. It wasn't just John didn't listen. There could have been something else about your safety program that failed, right? So instead of just blaming John for cutting incorrectly and not listening to the training, we have to look in the mirror at that incident to see what we could have done differently as an organization. And that's what we call accountability, all right? That's the word again. It's looking in the mirror at what we could have done differently instead of looking through a window to find someone to blame. You should ask yourself which elements of your IIPP failed, resulting in that incident. Ask these questions, or asking these questions is how you bring your IIPP to life. Have you ever heard that? It should be a living and breathing document. This is how you bring it to life. You pull it out and you look at it. You're referring to it regularly to see if you're following it or how you could improve as an organization. You might have just built this program last month and you have an incident today and you start reviewing this to see, was there something that failed? And you might decide you need to add something in the compliance section. How do we make sure our employees are complying with the training or the safety that we are communicating to them? All right. You might start adding things to this. You might start fleshing it out a little bit. Maybe something wasn't clear that you can make a little more clear for them. All right. That's how you bring it to life. All right. So let's go to our next poll. How well do you know what your IIPP says? All right, so go ahead and click on that, or I'm sorry, take a picture of that. Go to the next poll question. You can also use this one. We'll see how the answers are rolling in. How well do you know what it says? Not very well, very well, so-so, or it's a foreign language to me. I think I like this group. We got more so-sos, more so-sos. Someone's confident they know it very well. That's awesome. We've got 8 that have submitted. We'll give you another 2 seconds. Hopefully you're not struggling and fumbling with that QR code. All right, let's move on. Thank you for participating in that. One of you could probably teach this if you know it that well, because it's quite simple. What's in your IIPP? So here's another link. What if you don't have one or want to create one? Okay, this link will take you to build. It's a state fund builder. So Cal OSHA on their website, they have a link, this link that takes you to state fund's website to build an IIPP. You could click that as well to take you to this link. So let me show that to you real quick. So if any of you are in a position where you feel like you want a new one or you want help building one, you can use this. So it brings you to this site. You can watch the video, or you can come down here and get started. Okay, here's some information you're going to want to have available. But if you're a state fund policy holder, you can log in and do it, or you can do it as a guest. Okay, you click get started. It brings up this video that shows you how to do it. We're going to close that. It takes you through this here. I'm just going to show you a few screens because it is very simple. Business name, let's just make up a name, Chad Watts Roofing, and I'm in the construction industry. I'm going to go next. I can add my logo if I want to. I'm not going to right now. Now it's going to ask me some information about who's responsible for this. I'm responsible, and I'm the safety director. You can see how this is filling up. It's going to tell me when I'm done. I'm not going to stop for spelling. Plug in my street address. Confirm. And it says I'm 100% complete with that section. Now it's going to ask me some questions. How do you make sure your employees follow your procedures? Okay, it says this is optional, but you must inform them about your IIPP. It gives you some suggestions of other ways to confirm compliance, but you must select at least one of these. Okay, I'm going to select this one. And I'm going to say no to the rest of these. Maybe I'm a brand new employer. I have no clue what I'm doing, but I know I'm going to do this, and I know I'm going to do this. I'm done with that section. I move on. I can create my own IIPP very simply, and it's going to help me do it. It's going to ask me the questions. How often am I doing safety meetings? I'm going to do it every 10 days. And I'm going to get suggestions and feedback from employees through my tailgate meetings. All right, you see how simple that is? So you can use this resource to create your own. Even if you have one, you could start over if you wanted to. But I think that's a valuable resource. You can share that with anybody. Now, after I finished that process, I printed it. Okay, here are those elements: responsibility, compliance, communication, hazard assessment, accident investigation, hazard correction, employee training, and employee access. Those are those 8 elements. That was a 4-page IIPP. Very simple. Having built it, I'm very familiar with what's in it. Okay, but this is, again, the framework that your organization is going to use as the accountability tool. Did our training fail? Right? Did we not correct a hazard that we should have? How often are we correcting hazards? How are we correcting them? Who's responsible for correcting the hazard? All right. This is the accountability tool. And it was very simple, a 4-page document. OSHA comes in, where's your IIPP? Here are my 4 pages, and they go through it to confirm you're doing those things. Okay, they're going to hold you accountable based on what this says. All right, so how do you use it? We talked about this a little bit already. What is regularly? Okay, review it regularly and make sure you're doing what it says. Regularly is, in my opinion, whenever I do a job binder, I'm going to make sure on that project, we're going to be able to meet all these requirements in here, right? Every job's different. So we need to be very familiar with what's in this IIPP so that we know we can be compliant with our IIPP on that job. Maybe whenever I do a training, I'm going to refer to it. Am I training the way my program says I do, right? How can I incorporate the program, the IIPP, into my training? Whenever I meet with an employee, right, I might, as part of their employment review, I might look at how well they know the IIPP. Do they understand how we train, how we assess hazards, how we correct hazards, the chain of command when communicating, right? When I have a question about safety, I'm going to refer to the safety manual. What does our manual say? So that's how I'm using this program. If it needs an update with new steps or processes, I'm going to update it. Don't be afraid to update your program, okay? Some of you probably, I've got one, I think I showed this to you. Some of you got this, you paid a lot of money for it, and it's like this, don't screw it up, right? I barely know what it says. Some of you know what it says, but I don't really know what's in there, and I don't want to mess it up. Don't be afraid of that. If you see something in there that isn't right, make a change to it so that you are compliant. Get some help though, so that you don't change it and get yourself in trouble, but it's not that difficult. Ask us if you want the help to how to correct it or how to update it, how to insert new stuff. Whenever an accident or incident occurs, I'm going to refer to it. I'm going to look at it. And then I'm going to use it like a set of plans because it is my safety plan. Refer to it often. All right. Safety committees. Has anyone ever heard that they should not form a safety committee or not call it a committee? I have heard people say that. But why would someone say this to an employer, right? It could be because they simply heard someone else say it, so they're repeating it. Imagine walking your dog by a job site and overhearing a foreman telling 2 of her employees, do not use that ladder. She explains how unsafe they're being and how they should not be using this ladder. And you go home, because you don't know anything about ladders and safety, you go home and you're like, hey, honey, I just heard that ladders are unsafe, right? We shouldn't use ladders anymore. Yeah, the lady on the construction site told her employees they're unsafe. Okay. Now, for all we know, the ladder could have been broken or they were using it incorrectly. But we all know that ladders, when used correctly, are fine and safe. They're a very useful tool. This person that overheard the conversation took away the wrong message. And I think this is what happens with safety committees and the message around forming them. If a safety person is telling you not to form a committee, you should find out why. All right, why do you think we shouldn't form a committee? They might feel like you're not capable of doing it correctly, right? Like a ladder, if not used correctly, it could do more harm, okay? Maybe they don't know how to help you do it correctly. So there's lots of reasons they could say, don't do a committee or don't call it a committee. But committees are nothing to be afraid of. Educate yourself, right? And we're going to go through that right now. I'm going to explain what's required from a committee and how to do it correctly. Because like a ladder, when used correctly, safety committees are a very effective tool when it comes to your safety culture. All right, I can't stress that enough. So OSHA asks to see my IIPP, and they read this employee communication section that says we do safety meetings every 10 days. I show them documentation. They also see that we have a safety committee. They're going to want to see that I'm doing what safety committees are supposed to do. There's actually a standard in the code that says if you have a committee, these are the things that you must be doing. All right. What does a committee do? You could go to this website and get more detail about all 7 of these requirements. But here are the requirements: that you meet regularly, and the code actually says not less than quarterly, okay? So you're meeting regularly, you're maintaining records so that employees can come in and say, what is the safety committee talking about? Or OSHA can say, what is the safety committee talking about? So you're keeping meeting notes and you're keeping it all documented. The committee is reviewing worksite inspections. The committee's reviewing accident investigations. The committee's also reviewing alleged hazards. So if an employee comes in and says there's this hazard out on the job, the safety committee will review that as well. If an employee comes in with a safety suggestion, the safety committee will make themselves available to evaluate that suggestion and how to correct it. They'll support. All right. And lastly, if there's any citations issued by Cal OSHA, then the committee is going to verify that the hazard was corrected, right? The hazard was abated. So this is what a safety committee must do. So if you hear someone say, oh no, it's too hard, don't do it. This could be why. They think that you're not able to do this, be organized enough to do these 7 things and do it well. OSHA might come in and say, nope, you're not doing any of it. We're going to fine you. There's reality there, like using a ladder incorrectly. If you're not going to do it correctly, don't do it. But look at what the committee's doing here, right? Look at how much good you could do in your organization doing these things, okay? Look at all the things that you're reviewing. Look at how you're going to be evaluating all these different situations and the impact that would have on your safety culture. All right, this is a very effective tool when done correctly. All right. I find in these committee meetings, I'm going to bring up accountability again. Communication and accountability become a regular conversation because as we're reviewing these inspections and investigations and alleged hazards, as we review these, we start identifying that we're not good at following through. We talk about a lot of good things, but we don't do much after we talk about it. It's going to shine a spotlight on a lot of communication and accountability issues in the organization. And it's beautiful because you can clean it up. You can tighten up the communication. You can follow through and have good accountability. It's a fantastic tool. I can't say enough about a safety committee. You'll also discover in these meetings that in the past, you've been treating symptoms when it comes to your safety program, right? You're treating symptoms of problems, but this level of accountability and communication and evaluation of your organization, you're going to really get to the root cause of safety issues. And that's where you realize, you know, we've missed that. We've been treating just symptoms of problems, and now we're treating problems. It's a great tool. All right, let's move on. I haven't stopped to ask if anybody has questions, but you know to type them in the question bar in the chat tool. I'm going to click that link and just show you what that looks like on the website though also. Again, this was my pared down version of those 7 steps. So it's going to pull up this website. This is the guide to developing your program. And as you get down to the communication section, here's what's in the program. Safety communication. When you get down to this communication section, it says, as part of this section, you can implement a safety and health committee. All right, and if you do, you're going to be compliant if you do these 7 things. All right, so those are the 7 things that we just reviewed in my short list. It's not complicated, but you have to do it. All right, you have to do it. Again, like the ladder, it's not complicated, but you have to do it right. Okay, who should be on the committee? I like to look at an organization chart and see how information flows and how authority flows through the organization. All right, this will help determine who you want on the committee regularly and who you want rotating on and off as a guest throughout the year. Okay, the goal is to make sure that ideas exposures, suggestions, and solutions are making it to and from the committee freely. We need information to flow very easily from top to bottom and into the committee meetings. All right. I'll share that I like having, and it always depends on the organization. Every organization is different. But if you're thinking about a committee, upper management should be on that committee. It shouldn't just be upper management, right? Because then it can start to feel like management's just telling us more what to do. This committee is a dialogue. It is a conversation, and everybody needs to feel safe to talk openly and freely about safety. Okay, and if it's just upper management and then they're telling everybody what to do when it comes to safety, it doesn't go well. That's not good on a safety committee. Okay, but we do want upper management in there. We do want middle management in there if you have it. All right, but I'm sure you have field management. Now, depending on your organization and how often you meet, it might be too much to have every field manager in every committee, right? So this might become a guest role, that you'll have different foremen or crew leads coming onto the committee at different points in the year. You'll just have them rotate on and off the committee. Same with the employees. It would be too much to have every employee in every committee meeting. So you pick a couple, maybe one from each field manager, that they come together to the committee meeting when they come. But you want every level represented in that committee so that you know ideas are flowing freely and openly. These employees and field staff, field management and field employees, they need to feel safe in these meetings, okay? You could shut down the effectiveness of a committee meeting if upper management tries to run that meeting. I might have a middle management person chairing the committee so that they're welcoming everybody and they're running through the agenda, but we need feedback and information from these folks in the field. And then we communicate as a committee on how to move forward, how to make changes, how to implement new processes or procedures, right? A lot of good will be done if we have every level represented in this committee. But you get to decide who is always on the committee and who is a guest that comes on and off throughout the year. All right. But again, that goal is for information to flow. You'll also find, if you have a committee or if you're thinking about starting one, you'll find, again, you have great meetings, you have great action plans, but the field management needs help in how to communicate to their employees. All right, this is a big area that I see could become kind of a roadblock. And why isn't our program being successful? And I found that we promote field managers, right? So they were an employee and we made them a crew lead or a foreman. Why? Because they were really good at doing the tasks. They were a really good electrician or a roofer or a carpenter. And the guys looked up to them. They had more experience, so we promoted them to field manager. But did we really evaluate their effectiveness as a leader, right? As a leader. Do they have the skill set that a leader needs to communicate effectively as a leader? Because that is a different skill set. They might be a really good carpenter, but are they a good leader? Are they an effective communicator? Okay. So you might identify, we're having great things talked about up here. We're making good decisions, but we need to help these folks be able to communicate it to these folks. Maybe the message isn't getting there or the message isn't clear, okay? So that's another thing to consider when doing this is you're gonna start to realize that your leadership might need some extra training, might need some extra support to be effective in leading. All right. We're gonna move on now to accountability and communication. Good segue.
Hey, Chad, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Are there ways to measure the financial impact of these meetings? It seems expensive to have all of those people, especially high-paid ones, in these safety committee meetings.
There is a way. We can figure that out with you, but you're right. Depending on how frequently you're having those meetings, how long those meetings are, and again, how effective they are, because if they're effective meetings, you will see the financial impact far outweigh the improvement, the reduction in claims, the improvement in your rates on insurance because you're doing so well with safety. It will be a positive change. But yeah, there's a way to do that. I can look at it with you. There's not a formula. There's not a calculation. I could just give you a formula. But it is a concern. How do I get all these people in my meetings and still make money on a job, right? So that's where we want to evaluate how many of these people and how often, right? So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
And again, and I'll say that a committee might not be for everyone, right? We might not be there yet, but we can discuss and we can talk about what it will take to get you there, if that's what you want to do. All right, communication and accountability. So accountability, what it isn't. Accountability is not about finding fault. We don't want to find someone to blame. Okay, we already talked about this a little bit, but we're just going to make it clear here. Accountability is looking in the mirror. It's way too easy to just start pointing fingers and blaming others, right? But what do we learn from that, right? How do we avoid it in the future if we're just blaming everybody else? If we look in the mirror at our actions and what we could have done differently, then we can start to change. All right. So think about that. Whenever you're dealing with any issue in your organization, look in the mirror first. How could I have changed the outcome? And then as a team, we can talk about what I could have done. They can talk about what they could have done. And then how do we move forward collectively to avoid this in the future? Or if it was a successful situation, how do we reproduce that? Okay, what went right? Accountability is all about building and strengthening trust. Okay, we do that by front-loading expectations, understanding what success looks like, and checking in to make sure we're on track for success. All right. So we usually find communication is a key factor on these committees. So let me give you an example. If on Wednesday I say, hey, I need this report next week. Okay. To me, that means Monday. I want it Monday morning. But to the person I said that to, that might mean next week, Friday, right? The end of the week. I need to be more clear and say, I need this report on Monday, the 4th, by 10 a.m. Then I need to front load what I want on that report. Okay. I need to check in on Thursday or Friday. Say, how are we doing? Are you on track to get that to me on time? Right? That's the checking in piece. I'm doing what I can. I've asked for the report. I've told them what I need on the report. And then I'm going to check in to see if there's anything they need my help with to get it done. If anything's gotten in their way that will prevent them from getting it done, how can I help you get that done? How can we be successful? Let's look at here's a personal example I'll share with you. So I tell my kids to clean their room. I say, then 2 hours later, I go in and I notice that nothing's been done, right? I go in to check their rooms, they're not clean. I call them all together, why aren't your rooms clean? And what do they say? What do you mean? What do you mean they're not clean, right? I show them what they didn't do, what they should have done, how they did it wrong, and I'm frustrated and they're frustrated, right? If I'm gonna look in the mirror at that situation, I'm gonna realize, you know what? I obviously wasn't clear about what's clean. So next time I do this, hey, you all have 2 hours to get this stuff cleaned up. This is what clean looks like. When I say clean bathroom, this is what I mean, right? And I'm going through all the steps. This is what success looks like. 2 hours. If we get it done, we're going to go to Sunsplash. We're going to go have some fun on water slides. If it doesn't get done, we're going to spend another 2 hours doing other things I'd love to get done. Very clear about what success looks like, very clear about what the reward is, and clear about what the discipline would be if we fail. All right. After that conversation, I'm checking in about every 20 minutes. How's it going? How you doing in your room here? How's it going down here? Do you need my help? Do you have any questions about what I want done? I'm checking in, right? The last 20 minutes before the 2 hours is up. How are you doing? Do you need any help? Have you had any problems that are preventing you from getting this done? All right. I've front loaded success. I front loaded the reward. I front loaded the discipline. Now it's done. The 2 hours is done. I come in and everybody knows what the consequence is. Are we going to Sunsplash? I don't even have to ask if it's done. Are we going to Sunsplash or are we going to clean for another 2 hours? Okay. Nobody's frustrated or mad because we all knew what to expect. All right. This is a good example of accountability. And this leads into the next topic of rewards for safe behavior. All right. Front loading, clear expectations. Again, what success looks like. Checking in to make sure we're on track for success. And then reflecting, was the task successful? Right? And at that point, we're dishing out rewards or discipline. Now, here's where communication and accountability come to life. Okay. If I front load all that, right, we eliminate the frustration at the end because it was very clear what's expected and what the consequences are going to be. It was clear. Now, it's important to know that rewards go a lot farther than discipline, right? And when this is new to your organization, you're going to find that the more frequently you can reward, the more immediate your reward is, the better. It's important. It's key. So in the example with my kids, when I come in 20 minutes later, I'm saying, wow, good job on that. That looks really good. I can see you're working hard, right? You need some water. I'm giving out those compliments. That's the reward. Maybe on a job site, it's here's a $5 Starbucks card, or it's just a good job. That looks really good. But those rewards have to be immediate and they have to be regular. So if I'm checking in every 20 minutes on those kids, every 20 minutes, I'm finding something to say good job about, right? Or I'm tossing them a little bite-sized Snickers. This looks really good. Keep it up, all right? But if I come in after 20 minutes and it doesn't look like anything's been done, and I immediately start disciplining, that could have a negative effect, right? I need to be a little slower with my discipline. I need to find a reason to reward them and be very slow to discipline. But I have to discipline. Don't get me wrong. I have to discipline, but I'm going to try and be a little slower with my discipline and more immediate with my rewards. It is way more effective that way. Every situation's different. I get it. But understand what I'm saying. If you can find a way to say good job, far more often than you say, why wasn't this done right? That's not right. You're going to be way more effective. All right. This is also accountability. The regular check-ins are part of that accountability. Ensure you're on track for success. And then always look back. Now, we talked about building trust, right? Building and strengthening trust with accountability. This will do that. As you go through this process, the more frequently you do, at the end, you'll start to know who you can trust, who gets the job done when they're given a task, right? Your people are also going to learn whether they can trust you, whether they can trust you to support them, whether they can trust you to reward them or even discipline them. If they learn that you won't discipline them, then guess what? They're not going to do much. If you say you're going to reward them and you don't, you just taught them they can't trust you. All right? So they're earning your trust and you're earning their trust here and here and here. Okay? We're building trust both ways. And we have to show them they can trust us, to be very clear. We're going to check in to support them. And then we're going to reflect to see what we're getting, a reward or a discipline. All right. You'll also learn that as you go through this process, some people are just going to run away from your organization. They're like, I hate this. This is no good, right? But they don't like accountability. When they know how to win, they should be happy about that, because I know how to win. All I got to do is do it, right? Just follow the process and win. You've made it very clear what success looks like. But yeah, you'll see some people just run from your organization, and I think that's a good thing. When you can get them to leave, you don't have to fire them, and then you start bringing on people who embrace accountability, right? So this incentive program is huge. All right, here's what we've discussed. Okay, we went through the IIPP, how to build it, what's in it. We discussed how to develop a safety committee correctly and the benefits of a committee. We talked about how communication and accountability are key to your safety culture. And finally, we discussed how important it is to have a reward system and to reward immediately and frequently, and try to discipline slowly. All right. I think we're good. Yeah, we're there. We're going to get to the question section. So if there's any other questions, go ahead and type it in. And while we do that, I'll turn it back over to Jillian. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chad. We do have some questions for you. We are a national company that is office admin based. Do we still need an IIPP?
You do still need one. Yes. Every employer is required to have one. One of those links that I sent you, or that I put in that program, let me find it here. Here, I'll pull it over. So one of those links about the IIPP, so effective July 1st, 1991, every employer shall establish, implement, and maintain an effective injury and illness prevention program.
Thanks, Chad. Would that also be for states outside of California?
I can't speak to other states. I'm talking about Cal OSHA, federal OSHA. I'm not sure what their regulation is.
Okay, perfect. Another question we have is, I have an IIPP, but it's pretty iffy. Should I just throw it out and start over?
You don't have to. If it's iffy and you just don't have any confidence, sure, go ahead and throw it out and start new. I showed you how simple that is. But if you already have one, let's just look at it, right? Just review it and make sure it meets what you guys are doing. And if you need to make changes to it, then make those changes. But I wouldn't say you just scrap what you have and start over, because you might have a gem, you might have something really good, and you just need to remember how to do it effectively.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Another question. I've heard Cal OSHA does not like reward programs. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so Cal OSHA has made a clear stance on the type of reward program. Okay, so if you are rewarding because there were no injuries, that's what they don't like, because that incentivizes employees not to report injuries, right? Because they want their reward. So if I just say I wasn't hurt, then we'll get the reward. They want you to reward based on behavior. So this makes it more active. Your foreman, your superintendents, upper management, you have to reward them for their safe actions, not because they didn't have injuries. I hope that makes sense. But that's why they don't like those reward programs, is if it's incentivizing, don't report injuries.
Perfect, thank you. Another question we have is, can I use someone else's IIPP as a template?
Good question. Yes, you could. You just want to make sure you review it and make it yours. So use it as a template, like you asked. It's the same thing as jumping on the IIPP builder, right? It's a template that they ask you questions so you can make it your own. So you're going to want to read it and make sure you change anything that references another company and make it your own. But that is appropriate if you want to use somebody else's as a template.
Awesome. All right, we have a couple questions. Again, feel free to type them into the Q&A section if you do have them. I have a safety committee. How do I know if I'm doing it right?
Good question. So we talked about on some of those slides how to do it right, but I know it can feel a little bit like, am I doing it right? So just give me a call, and then we can walk through it one-on-one, what you're doing. I would even be happy to participate in your committee meetings. That is no problem at all. I do that as well. So let me help you with that one-on-one.
Perfect. And on that note, another question, our last one was, does Bender review and help build out IIPP handbooks?
Yes, we have someone that specializes in that particularly. And if you want to, so yeah, if you want to get one, we can help with that.
Okay, we just had one more pop through. Do we need to update our IIPP binder yearly?
I would say at least yearly. So they're going to pull it out, and that section that says, let's find it here. I don't want to mess up the slide. The section that says who's responsible, that page should reference who's responsible. So that needs to be accurate. And somewhere on that page, or even the title page, you'll want to have a date, right? So that's where you want that date to be, I would say, within 1 year.
Perfect. Well, those seem to be all of the questions. And Chad, if you wouldn't mind progressing to that next slide for me. I wanted to share, and again, if you have questions that pop up after, that always tends to happen, please feel free to reach out to us individually, and we are very happy to help you. But next up, coming up in September 20th, I hope you guys can join us at 9 a.m. We're going to be doing a hybrid session, meaning that you can either join us in person or virtually. Another construction-related topic: safety isn't just physical, spotting mental illness in construction. This is going to be a really wonderful class. You scan that QR code, you can sign up directly through that. But thank you so much, Chad, for sharing with us today. And we appreciate you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's Bender U. And as a reminder, this session has been recorded, and both the recording link and a copy of today's slide deck will be emailed to you following the webinar. Thank you again, Chad, and thank you, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.